out of New York in 1831.
Wow.
So, I wasn't expecting that. That was good. That's a good one. I can't remember the gentleman's name now. I had it on the tip of my tongue. So anyway, this gentleman, Matthew Griswold Elliott, started this private bank, and it was just him lending his money to the people in Haddam. And it was a very old community. And it eventually took in other partners, and one partner left, and then another partner. And then he had sons, so it became M.G. Elliott and Sons. And in 1867, he opened a branch in Cattaraugus, that new upstart community that was a result of the railroad coming through. Now, on your key tags at your table tonight, you'll see it says Boomtown, 1851. Well, Cattaraugus, if you'll look at the website that is printed on your name tag, under historiccattaraugus.com, you'll see the history of the village of Cattaraugus. It's a history none of you are aware of. You're not aware of the Revolutionary War battle with the British that took place within the village limits of Cattaraugus. There's a lot that's been recently discovered, and I'd appreciate it if you look at it and give me a little feedback as to what you think. So anyway, on those key tags, it shows Cattaraugus, Boomtown, 1851, and on the other side is our bank logo. Those were used recently as we funded the Firemen Southwestern Convention that was held in the village of Cattaraugus. That's a whole other story. That was a lot of fun. Mr. Gordon Stearns, who's just leaving there, thank you very much. Our pianist.
Thank you. He's coming back.
He's coming back in a minute. We paused for him to have some dinner, so thank you so much. The Bank of Cattaraugus is proud of being one of the oldest banking houses in the state, and considering its early origins in 1831, one of the oldest, very oldest in the country. The early owners of Bank of Cattaraugus, which was founded in 1882 to replace the private bank of M.G. Elliott, the growing community needed more stockholders, so all of a sudden there were 33 partners. Take it back, they weren't stockholders yet, they're partners. And they included lumbermen, hide tanners, cheesemakers, senators, assemblymen, judges, attorneys, blacksmiths, knife and cutlery makers, flour and sawmill operators, an axe factory owner. One of the biggest axe factories in the entire country was in Cattaraugus. A Civil War surgeon, and cousins to both Davy Crockett and Abraham Lincoln. The first presidents were elected because of their prestigious position in the community. Oscar Beach from East Otto, he was a pioneer settler and farmer. He was president from 1882 to 1887. He was followed by Solon Lang, a hardware store owner and member of the state legislature from 1887 to 1894. Herbert Rich was this bank's longest-serving president, holding that office from 1894 until his passing in 1930. Herbert's tenure was wonderful, but his service was that of a non-compensated figurehead, as was his predecessors, Beach and Lang. They never worked in the bank. They lent the strength of their name to the institution. And to interject, Herbert Rich, a little Herbert Rich story, as was told to me by Charlie Brock. Toward the end there, Herbert would come to the annual stockholders meeting in February, and that's the only time he'd be in the bank for the one end of the year to the next. And his compensation was a box of cigars, and there was a bouquet of flowers there for him to take home to his wife. I hope my voice doesn't give out. No, I have wine. Toward the end there, he took the flowers home and said, I don't know who the cigars are for. Now, when I start refusing cigars, you know, to get the hell rid of me. Herbert was followed into the presidency by Fred Johnson. Fred was a long-term employee who started in 1886 and served as president until his unexpected passing in 1940. Within 18 days after the passing of another officer, Harold Brown, father to Fenton Brown, at this table here, and grandfather to Teresa Fuse. Unexpected passing in 1940. Fred Johnson's wife, Louise, will long be remembered as having founded the Cattaraugus Free Library, as well as the Cattaraugus Women's Civic League. Celebrated their 100th anniversary this past year. The service of Jerry J. McCarthy will be forever remembered. Jerry was hired in 1904 and served as our president from 1940 to 1957. Unlike the first three presidents, Jerry actually worked in the bank for well over 50 years. We still have customers coming in and recalling Mr. McCarthy. His lifelong friendship with Russell Case, the owner of Case Cutlery, helped sustain this bank's profitability through the Great Depression. Could I ask somebody to close those doors? Pause for a little wine there. Of course, Mr. McCarthy's greatest accomplishment, besides bringing his favorite niece to Cattaraugus, Betty Blondestel, was hiring Ed Cullen in 1940. Ed was hired as a bank messenger by Marine Midland Bank, Buffalo in 1923 because he could run. He excelled on the South Park High School track team. His first day on the job, this 16-year-old was given a money bag with $40,000 in cash to take to another bank in downtown Buffalo. Ed had been given a .38 caliber Colt Baker Special for his pocket. By 1940, Ed was an experienced cashier of Niagara National Bank in downtown Buffalo. Ed was hired as cashier of the Bank of Cattaraugus in 1940 by Mr. McCarthy. L. Edgar Cullen became a director of the Bank of Cattaraugus in 1946 and was elected president in 1957. Ed was an officer or director of this bank for 46 years. Excuse me. This, of course, leads us up to where we are today with Patrick Cullen. Patrick was hired in 1971 after 2 years in Marine Midland Bank's executive training program. He had previously been employed at Bank of Cattaraugus during the summers of 1967 and 1968. Patrick became an officer in July 1971, vice president and director in February 1973, and president in May 1982. And this year marks Patrick's 30th year as CEO of Bank of Cattaraugus. I want to recall the service of Herbert Rich. That photo over there against the wall is of a building that burnt in the Great Fire of September 1888. That photo belongs to the local historical society. That photo is a picture of H.C. Rich and Company, Herbert Rich's hardware store. So I'll speak to that. Herbert Rich was one of the founding partners of Bank of Cattaraugus in 1882. H.C. Rich and Company was a primary hardware store in the village and was located on the corner of Main and Washington Streets. Herbert's store burnt in the Great Fire of September 1888 and was never rebuilt. Herbert had become more interested in the development and management of the Rich Lumber Company and its vast holdings in Adirondacks, Pennsylvania, and Vermont. In 1912, Mr. Rich donated the corner lot where his hardware store stood to Bank of Cattaraugus for a new building. Now, in 1882, there was no Bank of Cattaraugus building. For 1 year, it was operated out of a cheese factory that was located at the bottom of Waverly Street, behind where Toby Reinhardt's house was. So then in 1883, it occupied the building, which is now the Historical Society. In 1913, it occupied its current building. In 1912, Mr. Rich donated the corner lot where his hardware store stood to Bank of Cattaraugus for a new state-of-the-art building. The outside was constructed of sandstone and wrought iron, while the inside was constructed of Tennessee pink marble, Brazilian mahogany, and very ornate plaster, wall, and ceiling details created on-site by artisans from Italy. The bank opened for business in its new building in 1913. In 1957, the bank interior needed reconstruction to create confidential office space. There was none in the old building. The era of bookkeepers shouting down an account balance from their open office perch above the bank vault, and some of you remember that. You're overdrawn!
No, we don't remember that. That wasn't us.
And little or no document handshake loans. That era was coming to an end. A contractor was hired, and before anyone could object, tons of this Tennessee pink marble throughout the bank lobby was destroyed in one morning by workmen with sledgehammers. Very few pieces survived, but a young scrounge by the name of Patrick Culver gathered up some of the fragments and recently had them restored since 1957 by the Buffalo Granite and Marble Company. Joan, at this time, some of the old-time directors, officers, and stockholders are going to be given a little sample of this Tennessee pink marble in remembrance of that wonderful experience. Kurt Perkins.
Do you want me to help?
Kurt Perkins has been a director of Bank of Cattaraugus for 41 years.
I used to be a farmer. Morning, my pals would say, thanks for the warm hand.
Thanks for the warm hand. Warm hand.
Doug Ackley. Doug Ackley. Doug has been a director of Bank of Cattaraugus for 30 years. My little brother, Tommy Cullen. Thomas has been a director of Bank of Cattaraugus for 30 years. Joanne Fuller. Joanne has been a director for 21 years. Teresa Fuse. Teresa was first hired 35 years ago. She was 1 year old.
I told everybody I was 10. I don't obviously notice director. Oh, employee. I had to run the bank while they were all the directors.
And we have two very long-term stockholders, my sister Barbara Cullen Rao and Betty Bondestel. Employees that couldn't be with us tonight need mentioning. Jean Doucette, 41 years. And Michelle Gogol, this coming January, will have been with the bank 45 years.
Wow.
It's almost like a cult, isn't it? They all drank the same Kool-Aid. And I guess I drank it too.
Was that from around there? It's about.
This is a great night for celebration, and I want to celebrate how wonderful you all have been and important to our bank. We've had a series of wonderful and successful teams that included past directors of Gary Pritchard, was a director of our bank for 33 years, and absolutely priceless to the past, present, and continued operation of our bank. Fred Wyand, our attorney, was with us for 4 years, and Dave Schwartzmuller was with us for 5 years. We have lists back at the bank of wonderful past employees, and would like to recognize all of them and all of you here. The successful operation of this bank, the oldest bank in Western New York and possibly one of the oldest in the country, if you ratchet it back to 1831, is a testament to teamwork. One of the first things I tell each employee is there's no such thing as, that's not my job. That's not permitted in our bank. If there's a light bulb out, don't say it's not my job. There's a wonderful sense of teamwork. We couldn't do this without a good, wonderful, successful, positive, helpful, and supportive family. So in closing, I'd like to read you something that I found in my father's desk in 1986 when he passed away. I don't remember him showing me this during his lifetime, but he had it in a prominent place in his desk, and it is sort of touching. This is written by a Episcopal minister, Episcopal bishop by the name of Phillips Brooks. And I think my father embodied this a lot. This truth comes to us more and more the longer we live, that in what field or in what uniform or with what aims we do our duty matters very little, or even what our duty is, great or small, splendid or obscure. Only to find our duty, and certainly in somewhere, somehow do it faithfully. This makes us good, strong, happy, and useful, and tunes our lives into some feeble echo of the life of God. So, thanks for that, Dad. And thanks for all of you coming here tonight.